It's the fantasy basketball waiver wire. That's what we're here to discuss at the beginning of week 8, Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am a malnourished pimp with World War I facial hair wearing my sister's clothes. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and the most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. No games today. As you're aware, we're getting ready for Week 8. Week 8 preview show was yesterday. 24 out of 30 teams play 4 games. Streaming is going to be viable for at least 5 of the 7 days, maybe 6. So we're back to normal, back to fantasy. And there's a lot of unanswered injury questions that I'm not sure we're going to get. I'm not sure we're going to get all of the information about over in the next 24 hours. Some of it might come tomorrow. So that does make it difficult. And with 13 games on Monday, at least it gives us a chance that we can take flyers on some guys to hold, and we don't have to necessarily play them, and we can see what pans out. It is a weird situation, as always. In the NBA, there's always something going on. And like just now, as I hit record, we got news that Kevin Durant didn't practice, but Bradley Beal did. So what does that mean? Is Beal going to play and Durant's not? Are we ever going to get these blokes to play together? I don't know. It is... Yeah, it is a frustrating scenario with all of this stuff, as it always is. But we're going to talk waiver wire. As I said, we're going to get into all of the details. We're going to look at must rosters and most addeds and some injury replacement guys and all of that stuff. That's what we do on this show. Let's just start by cracking into the must roster list. These are just players who I believe are top 100 guys that shouldn't be sitting on the wire. Herb Jones, must roster category league guy. Points league, iffy. Like in a 12-team points, you probably do it. In a category league, you have to do it. Also, he's one of those guys you have to be really, really careful of when you view the Yahoo rankings. Because you'll see Herb Jones on a Yahoo ranking. And I'm going to actually look up the number because I'm pretty sure it's going to be insane. But his value is so highly influenced by low volume categories that it can skew your opinion of it. Yeah, like he's currently ranked on averages on Yahoo 34th. And if I look at totals, he is 25th, which is ridiculous. Herb Jones is not a second-round player. I guess technically 25 is not a second-round player. It's the first pick of the third round in the 12-teamer, but that's ridiculous. That is not his value. That is not where he is at all. So I will get these questions. Like Herb Jones is available in 22% of leagues. Shouldn't be available in any category leagues, but then I'll get a lot of questions of like, do I trade Herb for insert like Jalen Brunson? Who might be injured, but yeah, like yes, like what? Yes, of course you do. Of course you do. So those things can be really, really skewing to the value of him. Keegan Murray sits at 77%. At this point, I do believe he's a must roster. Let's check back at week 10. He might not be because I haven't been impressed. But again, as always, understand who you're listening to. A malnourished pimp with World War I facial hair who didn't like Keegan Murray in the draft, was not enamored by him, was impressed enough in his rookie season, but it didn't completely change my opinion on him. So I'm always going to be like, he's fine. That's my opinion on Keegan Murray. He's fine. I don't see star, I don't see any of that. But there's a bunch of priors built into that. So understand that when I talk about it. That is where I come from. But I still do think for now, we have to roster him. But I'm probably going to be quicker than most to move off. Although maybe not, because 23% of people don't have him rostered. Malik Monk, honestly, he might be a better option than Keegan Murray. He's not. I still have Murray over Monk, but Monk's available in 35% of leagues. So Leakey's got to be grabbed, I think. Kobe White, well, you know my thoughts on that. And I wasn't the biggest Kobe White guy in terms of a draft prospect or a player. It's more just about opportunity and role, and it's rising and rising. I'm glad those discussions of how long do I hold Kobe White for are done, because it's obviously pushing up. He's at 75%, a little bit more to go. I don't know why Max Strus is appearing here at 78%. He's a must-roster player. Last game struggled, but we do have like a 20-game body of work here where it has sort of turned his game around. Things might change. We saw what happened with Dennis Schroeder in Toronto, where he looked, very different Dennis, and now he's not. But I do have some confidence that Strus stays. And the other one is Trey Murphy. I know he's back from injury, but 28% of people are sleeping. Now, the two guys who are italicized there, the two Pelicans guys, Jones and Murphy, they're not, I don't think, top 100 points league players. You still should have them in a 12-team points league, but you don't have to look at them as like, why this is egregious, why are they on the waiver wire? But in a category league, even in a 10-team, both Jones and Trey do need to be on rosters, I think, fairly clearly. We've got 41 total names that we're talking about in today's show. 41 waiver wire names that we're going to talk about. It's a lot. It's a lot. Let's look at the most dropped players. I've only got 5 of them here. Or not most dropped. The droppable guys. All rostered over 60% that I'm not sure you have to in a 12. I don't have them top 150 rest of season. And number 1 is Punch Bob Shit Bloke Bobby Portis. Coach Challenging Legend is at 68% rostered. He's doing nothing. Even with Jay Crowder out, what's he playing? 23 minutes a night? He is, again, I know people will always mishear. Like I said this about Jokic the other day, and I was very clear, and I will say it again. Nikola Jokic is still the best player in the NBA. Nikola Jokic is still the player I would take number 1. Maybe I would take Shea, but I would take Jokic in fantasy number 1 without any question whatsoever. But when you turn 29, and Jokic is, that is the cusp. There is a decline that starts. And as I said, this decline it might be a 0.01% change over 3 years, which is what it might be for Jokic, but it's unlikely that at that point that you get better, this starts to be a drop-off, a consistency drop-off, whatever it is. That's what I said about Jokic, because, man, you're ridiculous. How dare you have that take? He's still the best player. I know he is still the best player, and I will comfortably tell you that without any question. He is the MVP. He should be the MVP. He's the best player, and he's the guy you take number 1 in fantasy in nearly every situation. But when you hit 29, there is a lot of data on this. That is when we see a decline. And Bobby Portis is around that age. And he was a guy that could come in and play 25 minutes, get an efficient double-double, and be useful off the bench and then spike when someone got injured. Now, in those 24 minutes, it's not worth it. He's turning into a guy that if Giannis or Brook misses, you add him, and that's it. So I don't think we need to hold Bob Portis. And I think it's relatively clear. Now, sometimes I can go early on things and get it wrong, but I went early on Russell Westbrook, saying it's a drop, and it's a drop. He's still 82% rostered. In a points league, I think you give him a bit of grace. There is some value for him to be your 11th best player in a 12-10 points league. In a category league, there is no justification in my mind. Because even if one of those other guys gets injured, is Westbrook actually good enough that he's going, man, it's going to be so good if Paul George is out, that Westbrook gets to start and play 30 minutes and hurt my field goals, turnovers, free throws even more, still not hit any threes? Look, is that good? I don't think so. To me, there is no justification in a 10 or a 12-team category league for Russell Westbrook to be rostered unless we're talking about a non-standard roster size. Andy Wiggins, he's just been on this list the whole time. Get rid of him. Roland Barrett, 78% rostered. Points leagues, hold. Category leagues, drop. And then the other one is a little more controversial as well. Kelly Oubre. You do not have to drop Kelly Oubre. That title does not say, please drop this guy. I am begging you, or else there will be consequences. The title says droppable, meaning they probably are droppable. Now, some of these ones, like Wiggins, who's been on this list for 8 weeks, then I might have to get violent, right? But with Oubre, it's like, yeah, okay. But to tie it all back, like a broadcaster does, to the Keegan Murray stuff, I was low on Oubre. I always have been. He's a guy that seems to me to need outlier shooting with outlier minutes and outlier usage, which makes a team bad. And he's not on a bad team, and he's not getting outlier minutes, and he's not getting outlier usage. They are keeping him off the bench, and maybe there's a slow ramp up. But I also think that the presence of Batum in that starting line has been really positive. And if Oubre's a 26-minute player off the bench, then there's no use for him in a 12-10 league. He needs to be a 30-minute, 31-minute a night guy getting 27 usage, way too much of it, and shooting well above career norms. He can be a steal streamer and a point streamer, all that stuff. You do not have to drop Kelly Oubre. You don't have to. And in points leagues, I would hold. But if you're in a situation where you've got a player, Bradley Beal, coming off your IR, and Oubre's sitting there, I wouldn't feel bad about dropping him to activate somebody like that. That's the way I'm looking at this. It's like, well, he's actually too good to drop. No, he's not. You don't have to go out of your way to do it, to try and roster in some nonsense player who might get half a game of good value. You don't have to do that. But Oubre's in that position where it's like, not 100% sure we need to do it. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS as well, because it's you against numbers. It's not you against sharks and pros and thousands of other players and having to wrangle salary caps. You don't have to do any of that. They just chuck up a player projection, Kelly Oubre, 11 points, and you say, less. Okay, easy. They might say Russell Westbrook, turnovers more or less than 7. And you go, more. And you do between 2 to 6 of those, stick them into an entry and you can get up to 25 times your money back. There's multiple sports you can do as well. Plus, they've got these combo projections, which they, in their specials league, it's a league that has the combo projection. So it might be LeBron threes plus Travis Kelce receptions set at 10.5. And you just go, well, I think they're going to go for more than that. Easy to do. The entries are fast. It's easy to perform. Just more or less on projections. I don't know how much more easier it can be. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks is daily fantasy sports made easy. It was remiss of me not to mention it at the start of the show, but congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers for winning the NBA Cup and the NBA's in-season tournament. And if you've got any criticism about them celebrating, shut up. Like, what is people's problem? Well, why would they celebrate? It doesn't mean anything. How do you know it doesn't mean anything? It's a tournament that the NBA put in. They all competed. They were going for the money. They wanted to win it, and they won it. And for everyone this is what I always find the crossover, right? It always seems to be the same people. The same people who are like, these players don't want to play. All they're there for is to get dressed up and to be seen and to make money, but they don't really love the game. They don't love competing. And then they go out there and they compete for something which you deem meaningless, and then they celebrate that win. Why do you even care about that? Because they love to play and love to compete. There's an incongruity. Maybe I'm incorrect about them being the same people who complain about those two things. Pretty sure I'm right, though. So, yeah, well done. Good win. The Lakers haven't been rolling in the regular season, but they've played so well during this tournament, destroyed the Pelicans, very, very good against the Pacers as well. AD was amazing. LeBron was doing shit that I've never seen him do for 10 years. It was ridiculous. They've made Cam Reddish into a viable rotation player. Does this mean much for the playoffs? I don't know. And I don't actually, people, but the cup doesn't mean anything. You've got to make it mean something for the playoffs. I don't think you do. I don't think you have to do anything like that. Someone brought up an interesting thing you could do, is that, yes, this is an 83rd game that doesn't count in the NBA's regular season standings or stats, but the suggestion that someone gave me, and I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, they said, but maybe what you could do is, like, we're not giving guaranteed playoff spots, a terrible idea, which I've seen floated around, or a guaranteed playing spot, terrible idea. That actually weakens the value of their regular season for that team, because they say, we're in the playoffs anyway. We can just load manage everything for the rest of the way. We're fine. We're in. Right? That's a terrible idea. What they can do is that if you win the NBA Cup, you just get a bonus win. So at the end of the season, if you finish 42-40, you actually end up at 43 wins, which I know it makes it uneven that you've played 83 games, but that's your incentive to play that game, which I don't hate, but also don't have a problem with there being nothing that ties into the playoffs regarding the NBA Cup. It's just something different. And I thought it was cool. The blue and red court, terrible. But I love all the other colored courts. That one, dreadful. But there's going to be some tweaks, but overall I think it was a huge success. I almost bore out of them, but I realized it's not 2002. What year did Bora come out? 2003? I don't know. It doesn't matter. All right, we will go into the next bunch of guys, and we are looking at the most added players in fantasy basketball. Over the last 48 hours, number one is Derrick Jones Jr. Kyrie, probably out. Dealing with a heel contusion, so we've escaped the long-term thing there, but I'd say he's gonna miss a couple of games. Let's just rule Kyrie out for this week. Josh Green is out for this week, and Grant Williams is out for probably at least the next 2 games as well. So Jones, we've already seen this season when Kyrie's out, usage of minutes go up. He was going to start with Green out, and now Williams is out. He is a must-roster player for this time being. Derrick Jones Jr., amazingly, this is what we're saying, must-roster player for this week. Probably going to be top 100 this week. Caleb Martin has been added in a lot of spots. The Heat have announced that Hero and Bam are out once more, and Highsmith, I believe, is questionable. So that's where we're at with that. But those guys being out means Martin has value. I don't know that he sticks long-term, but we go with it. And the Martin, Richardson, Lowry, Duncan Robinson, Orlando Robinson, Jaime Jaquez, six-pack streaming value from the Heat remains. Eric Gordon up 10%. Well, with Durant maybe not playing, Beal coming back, like who knows? Grayson Allen still up in the air. I don't know. But it is worth having Eric Gordon for now. The Suns do have a strong schedule. We talked about that. But it is also, a lot of people, I think, there seems to be a misvaluation in fantasy at the moment where I see people talking about fantasy, which I love. I love as many people talking about fantasy basketball as I can, even if I sometimes disagree with the advice that people give. But that's fine because we get shit wrong. And they'll be right sometimes and I'll be right sometimes. And sometimes we'll agree and sometimes we'll both agree and be wrong. That's okay. But what I'm trying to talk about here is that when we look at the week and we look at it and people will automatically just look at this and say, well, the Suns and the Celtics have, as I'm trying to bring my screen up here, the Suns and the Celtics have the best schedule for the week, right? That's a common thing that you're going to hear. They've got 4 quality games for Boston and for Phoenix, right? That's true. But it's not always just about that. It's about when these games take place as well. Because the Suns do have 4 quality games. They play Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, which is pretty good. But I like to look at it more in shorter term things. Because the Celtics also have 4 quality games, but it's not the same as the Suns' schedule because they don't play on Wednesday. So they play Tuesday, they play Thursday, Friday, and then they play Sunday. So it's not like, well, I'm adding someone at the start of the week and I'm just going to hold them all week. When you can actually probably do more with that roster spot. You can probably get 5 games out of that roster spot instead of 4. Instead of just holding one guy. And it's because most of us aren't in a spot where we're making waiver moves once a week. And then we just try to get the most quality games out of that one move. We can actually move through it. So it's never as simple as, well, Suns and Celtics, most quality games, they're the best ones because even both of those schedules are different. I'd much prefer a Suns guy at the start of the week than a Celtics player because I get a Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back to kick things off. Dante Exum, one of the most added players. Everything I just said for Derrick Jones, copy-paste it. I would have Exum behind Jones in the priority order. Exum was great last game. He wasn't quite as good the game before that, but he's more likely to get assists. But he's got all that, the value there with Exum is bumped because Green, Williams, and Irving are out. But as soon as a couple more of those come back, he's more likely to lose minutes than Jones is. You could make a very easy argument that Exum versus Jones right now for the very next game, Exum might be better. That is true. But I think the difference is close enough to me that the value of Exum probably falling quicker than Jones's means I lean a little bit more into Jones. But I've got no problem with adding Dante Exum. Pat Williams we've been talking about as an ad here for the last week and a half. Now people are starting to jump on Yahoo. I think he needs to be rostered everywhere. He will disappoint us without almost any question whatsoever. He can be inconsistent and he can just be flat out bad. But Zach LaVine is out. We just keep going with Williams until it doesn't work, and maybe things figure out. He should be rostered. And then the next most added player on Yahoo, why is this even possible? But Derek Lively up 965 teams. Just, what are we waiting for? That is one of the slowest come-to moments that I've ever seen. Let's look at the most dropped players. Number 1 there is Reggie Jackson, down 13%. NBA 2K created player legend. Should be dropped now that Jamal Murray is back, and we just add him back in the next time. Cool, done, see ya. Rabbit Hunter, Alex Caruso, yeah. Like, is he going to play next game? I honestly don't know, or I don't care. At this point, I just don't care. I cannot invest any more of my life in waiting to see whether Alex Caruso is going to be in or not. 28 minutes, I've got to go and add him, and then he inevitably leaves the game. This is one of the most clockwork things I've ever had. You can't. I can call Daniel Gafford the locker room legend. You can call Anthony Davis Mr. Glass. He's always making. This is the king of this shit. I love Alex Caruso, one of the best, if not literally the best perimeter defender in the NBA. That's how good he is. But he can't do it. He can't handle it. It's a frustrating thing. And add him when he plays and drop him when he gets hurt. Simple equation. People drop Duncan Robinson. I get it. For a number of reasons. A lot of it was reactionary because he had one of the worst games you'll ever see. Was he 0 of 6 with turnovers and 1 rebound last game? Like, he was bad. But he's also been awesome all the way out that Tyler Hero's been out. And Hero's out again. And Robinson is a better option than Richardson, than Jaquez. The problem here is if you do need to make other moves and you want to say, I'm going to move to Derrick Jones or I'm going to move to Dante Exum, for example, and Robinson's the guy I need to drop, that's okay. It's okay to sacrifice one game of Duncan Robinson because Hero is probably coming back soon. And sometimes we have to make these moves where we go, in the short term I do get hit, and in the long term I get more value in. So if you dropped him for petty he sucked last game-ness, that's not a good move. If you dropped him because you needed to do something with your IL spot or add somebody else in because Hero's return is relatively imminent, then it's okay. But I also have no problem with streaming him back in on any quality games this week if those guys remain out. Torian Prince and Aaron Neesmith, two of the most dropped players on Yahoo, they were, I'm guessing, I'm hoping, they were only added for Thursday's game. I hope people didn't go in and add them because they were playing on Saturday when there was the NBA Cup final on and people did not realize that that game didn't count. But that was definitely not any of you guys, was it? Definitely wasn't. You guys didn't believe that the game on Saturday counted, did you? No way. No, absolutely not. So I'm glad it wasn't you. But I do fear that considering we are 4 days removed from the games on Thursday, that the reason that Neesmith and Prince are being dropped in such volume now is because people added them for yesterday. Steve Carell office meme face. And the other one is Isaiah Thompson, which is unfortunate. Because Monty Williams, I'm afraid my guy doesn't know what he's doing. And we're at that stage where I wish I knew it's the Nick Nurse line. That's what I'm going to call it now, with the Nick Nurse line, where we're at that spot where a coach says something and if you don't believe it and go against him and then he does what he says, well, you seem stupid. But you know deep down that he's probably lying. And I think we're at the stage now where you're going to get the benefit of the doubt if you just go against what Monty says anyway. Because he said that he wanted to play more Jaden Ivey, play with more pace, played lower pace, played less minutes of Ivey. Cool, that doesn't make any sense. So now he's like, yeah, no, we actually need to get Asar more into these screen and roll type actions and use him for his strength instead of him sitting in the corner. Bro, you're the one that's in control of all that, but I don't believe it. So do I believe they're going to go back to using Asar Thompson properly? No, I don't. Even though Monty said it out loud with his mouth, with his voice, he said it. He said many other things, and they have all been wrong. So, I don't trust him, but Thompson's upside is huge. I get dropping him, though. I'm probably at that point myself, but as soon as we see the minutes push back up, there's a clear opportunity for him to start right now. But I just don't think they're going to do it. Unfortunately, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. As the weather gets colder, the offers. Oh, yeah, those offers on FanDuel for the NFL, for the NBA, they stay absolutely roasting hot. They do, because new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That is $150 if your team wins. So, on FanDuel, you can go there, check it out. If you've been thinking about joining, I don't think there's ever been a better time. In fact, I'm sure there has never been a better time to get in on the action on FanDuel. The app is super easy to use. They've got their parlays and futures and spreads. What do you reckon the odds would have been on FanDuel for Jaden Daniels to win the Heisman? There's almost no chance. Now, my son was talking him up because he's an LSU fan. It's like, nah, Daniels is going to be great. I go, nah, I don't think so, mate. Look, he's fine. Like, his last season wasn't that good, but then he came in and just dominated, destroyed all things. And he won the Heisman. All these futures, parlays, same game stuff, total spreads, it's all there over on FanDuel. So go to FanDuel.com/lockedon and you get ready to keep rolling with the NFL season, with the NBA season, with college bowl season. It's all there. FanDuel is also an official partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay, what are we doing next? We are looking at some hot players who has been rolling top 100-ish over the last week or so, and the number one guy on this list is the painter himself, Matisse Thybulle. He's still rostered in 14% of leagues. The Blazers are in a very, very interesting situation. Thybulle's played, I think, 20-plus minutes in 6 straight games. He hit some threes, he gets some steals. That's really, really valuable. But I don't really know how the minutes all shake out. Because at the moment, Brogdon, Ayton, Grant are all out. When they all return, that is 32 for Ayton, 36 for Grant, let's say 25 for Brogdon. Toumani Camara has been very impressive. But for Thybulle to get 20 minutes, Camara basically has to not play, same with Jabari Walker. The 240 game on this team, for as bad as they are, even though they're much better at the moment, the 240 game is actually really impossible. So Thybulle's been good. He's fine to use at the moment. But I fear when all of these guys come back, and again, if the easiest shortcut you have in fantasy when trying to decide this is look at the roster, 240 minutes, 9 to 10 players. Figure out how it works, and then when you go in to do it, this is what I do every day, and I go, how do I get him enough minutes? How do I get him 24? Unless they play Kamara 0. And then you'll have someone else come at you, which is one of the great things on Basketball Monster. They don't come at you, but sometimes they do. But on Basketball Monster with a forum set, people go, hey, I think you need to adjust Kamara's minutes. And then someone goes, hey, you got to adjust Thybulle's. I go, well, they both can't be done simultaneously. And it's the same with Caleb Martin and Jaime Jaquez and Josh Richardson with the Heat. They all can't be boosted. because someone loses out somewhere. And that is the discussion here with Thibault. With those guys out, sure. When they come back, I don't know. Trey Jones at 48%. He's been better. And the siren that we got last game was he played like 28 minutes and had big assists. And while I don't know what this team is doing, the fact that Zach Collins is now on the bench means that Sohan can push up and play more at forward, meaning there's more opportunities for Trey Jones, meaning I'm go and add him, even though he will hurt your scoring and percentages. Grayson Allen at 27%. Suns, Tuesday, Wednesday, back-to-back is a W. He's been playing well. Now, I don't know if he's going to play even anyway. The Beal, Durant uncertainty. Allen's got his own uncertainty, but he's worth a look. The Wizard of Oz, Naz Reid at 54%. I'm still not 100% convinced on that, but Edwards is injured again. We've still got no Jaden McDaniels, and Edwards being out while they play different positions, Reid's high usage, value and efficiency scoring may mean they have to push into more of those even 3 big lineups. That gives him a little bit more value. I don't think he's a long-term guy, Naz Reid, but for now, if Edwards is missing, sure. Back to Detroit, Killian Hayes is 29% rostered. He's been a top 120 guy over the last week. Common sense and Detroit don't go hand in hand, but it would dictate that at some point Hayes does not do this, but he's doing it now, so we just roll with it. And the last one there is Kelly Olynyk, who I just wanted to mention because he has been top 100 over the last week somehow. Last 2 weeks, actually. But I don't really see that happening. They went back to Walker Kessler over Omer Yurtseven, and shockingly, Yurtseven was a 0-minute player. What a surprise that is. I don't know that Olynyk can hold even this role long-term because eventually I think they'll turn stuff over to Taylor Hendricks. And I don't think that Kelly's a 12-team league guy, but I just wanted to highlight that he has been putting up some pretty strong numbers, and that probably moves him more into a streaming guy. We've got another 12 players to talk about. Let's go to injury replacements. Orlando Robinson's at 22% rostered. Bam is out again. I'd be okay with... Now, last game wasn't good for Robinson. He did have some early foul trouble, but I do think he's worth having and even starting on a big volume day. Isaiah Hartenstein sits there at 4%. Why is that? Because we don't know the status of Mitch Robinson. Now, last season when Robinson got hurt, Tom Thibodeau'd us and just completely annoyed us by playing Jericho Sims, who is very, very clearly worse than Isaiah Hartenstein. But Thibodeau has a complete obsession with a center who jumps upwards and never touches the ball. That's his obsession. So Sims and Hartenstein split the minutes. It is very clear to me that Hartenstein is a better player than Jericho Sims. It is very clear to me that Hartenstein's a better fantasy player than Jericho Sims. But it also doesn't matter until Leon Rose asks me to coach the Knicks. It actually doesn't matter if I think that. I still would add Hartenstein over Sims in case there is a change in... Sims has played, 0 minutes this season. In case there's a change in Thibodeau's mindset. But bloody hell, imagine waiting for a change in that guy's mindset. But with Robinson maybe in or out, look at it. Also look if Quickly had been dropped because Brunson's hurt too. Shockingly, Brunson got hurt in the final seconds of a blowout. Troy Brown, 2%. This is more for deeper leagues, but if Edwards misses, Brown's the guy I feel a little bit more confident in than Alexander Walker. You can use both of them, but Brown's available everywhere. That's only a shorter term thing, but he's been actually shooting really well. Tim Hardaway, I went to look at his roster percentage. I was shocked. It's at 48%. With Kyrie out, I don't think that he's going to start, but he very easily could. But I do know that he's going to get more shots and more ball handling. I would love it to be Jaden Hardy, but I don't think it's going to be. I think it's going to be Tim. So those 52% of leagues, I'd be adding Tim Hardaway absolutely toot sweet. Jabari Walker's at 3%. That is while Aiden and Grant are out. Otherwise, we don't need to do it because the 240 game squishes him completely. And the other one, which I really, really didn't want to do, but I put Marvin Bagley there. Who knows what happens? Could they start him at center again? Could he play 26 minutes and have 12 and 10 with a block? Sure. Could he play 18 minutes and they go to more Isaiah Stewart at center? Sure. Do I know anything that team is going to do? Absolutely not. But there is an opportunity here with Jalen Duren out for the next 2 weeks for Bagley to have some level of value. And lastly, I've got 6 other names that I do want to talk about here. And I am going to go back to your mate, Thomas Thibodeau, and talk about the change in the starting lineup with the big ragu, Dante DiVincenzo, who's at 9% rostered. Like we said again, the theme of this show is the 240 game. Grimes moved to the bench and DiVincenzo started. That did not mean DiVincenzo was a 36-minute Julius Randle starter. But there is a little bit more scope for him to play maybe 1 to 2 more minutes. I don't have faith in it. I've added Dante in some deeper formats. I think I added him in the Locked On Fantasy... Well, I tried to add him in the Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Haven't actually looked to see how that went through. But I don't know that I don't think he's a must-roster 12-team league player. But it's at least worth watching. You've got Bilal Coulibaly at 33%, who's putting up like top 150 over the last week or so. That's okay. But I don't really think that he's a must-roster 12. But just a name to watch and see how the role evolves. This is one that I did add, John Kuminga, 16% rostered. I don't have faith in Kuminga as a player with his basketball feel or IQ or Steve Kerr's ability to trust his feel or IQ. I don't have any faith in that at all. But the last 2 games have been strong. They've been overwhelming with physical prowess, and they're leaning into his minutes. Wiggins is struggling. Add him. Let's find out. Royce O'Neal, which I spelt like people think that I say it. Royce O'Neal, 24%. He's playing really well. I don't really believe that can hold. But with Simmons out, his somehow evolved playmaking is useful. He's a very strong 14-team league guy. I am throwing Amen Thompson on here at 21% rostered because I've got a lot of questions about it. And he's obviously rostered in a lot of leagues. And his transaction trend is going up. Thompson is back with the Rockets now, but much like Tari Eason, I do not believe there are a path for enough minutes for Amen Thompson. Now, people ask this question a lot, happens a lot. And I say, I don't see how he has any value in 12-team leagues this season, unless there are injuries. And then the question is, don't you think that he's better than Dylan Brooks? And even if I did, it literally doesn't matter whether I do. Do I think that if I was running the Rockets, I would want to prioritize a little bit more Amen, even over Jalen Green or Dylan Brooks? At times, yes, I would. But I'm not. So it doesn't matter whether I think that, because I know what Ime Udoka thinks at this point. And he thinks he needs to get 33 minutes of Brooks and big minutes into everybody else, and 40 minutes of Fred VanVleet. So I don't think that there is any real chance, outside of injury, for Amen to be a 12-team league player. For as much as we can like what he does, he's not ready to do that, and there are plenty of capable players ahead of him. The last one there is Cam Reddish, who defended really well in the in-season tournament final. The Lakers only played 3 games this week, but don't let that fool you. They have a very good schedule. They have 3 quality games, and not everyone does. In fact, hardly anyone does. And Reddish is probably going to keep starting. Also, shout out to Max Christie playing more than Rui Hachimura, because Rui Hachimura, I know I've been saying it for a long time, not that good, and I think Max Christie can be pretty good. But Reddish's ability to get threes and steals, which is something, despite how bad he has been in Atlanta and in Portland and in New York, he has always been a threes and steals guy. And now he's getting solid run. That makes him at least a 14-team league option. And there's a little bit of 12-team in there as well. And guys, that will do it for me today. Don't forget to go ahead and subscribe. We are at, you know where we're at. I didn't do it at the start, but I'm going to do it now. We are at Operation 70K. We're at 300 people away from subscribing. So go and hit that subscribe button on YouTube. And if you're listening on audio, go and hit the YouTube as well and just see what we got going. Where you can see the names up on the screen while I'm talking. And then if you're here on YouTube, we've got an audio version too, which you can put on the car while you're doing chores. It's all good. We can just download it from both spots. Really help the numbers up. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.